Neat Nation, welcome back to the Droopy Whiskey Show, where we are revisiting an OG topic. One of the first videos that I had that found some traction way back when, a year ago, not that long ago. But it was I forget what I called it exactly, but every bourbon you need or every whiskey you need for the perfect Thanksgiving. It's just a fun topic. If you were to pair a bourbon with every moment in Thanksgiving, on Thanksgiving Day, what would they be? Well, today we're going to break them down. I think I have 7-ish of them. It's going to be sick. Before we get into that, if you're new here, welcome. Get down in the show notes below. I've got more links for you to get to know the channel a little bit more. Like, comment, and subscribe. That's a way you can support and help out. I want to know, what are you drinking on Thanksgiving Day? I'm probably going to be drinking some of these 7. I'll probably pick one, maybe 2. I don't know if we're going to actually hit all 7, but it's fun to play, hypothesize, dream a little bit. What if we drank 7 bourbons in a day? Whiskeys. I think I've got a rye or 2. It would look something like this. Whiskey number 1 is the Hair of the Dog. I learned that the most popular bar day in the United States, apparently, this is alleged, didn't verify it, but it's supposed to be the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. It's going to be a long weekend. You're getting together. You're back in town with the boys. And so what do? You apparently go to the bar. You apparently drink a decent amount at the bar because you got 4 weekend days ahead of you. Why would you not, I guess? Except for the hangover, the fact that you're not going to feel good for the next 48 hours. There are some reasons not to, but I understand why people would. Anyway, let's imagine that you did. You went to the bar. You wake up the next day. Ow. You need a little Hair of the Dog. And, that doesn't have to be a refined whiskey. It just needs to be a bourbon that's going to be like, okay, I'm alive again. And so we're going to start with Wild Turkey 101. Today's 7 whiskeys are going to be very turkey heavy because it's Thanksgiving, right? Wild Turkey 101 is fine. I mean, not bad. For a bottom shelf whiskey, like $20, I guess, for a 750 milliliter, it's pretty good. Full flavored. Doesn't possess a lot of richness. I mean, very nutty, spicy, funky, but does have some lighter caramely sweetness. If you compare it to other $20 bottles, particularly at the 101 proof point range, bottle and bond style, it's pretty good. So it's one to have around. I killed a bottle a while ago, so I actually don't have any around. But man, if you're just looking for a shooter, something to bring you back to life a little bit, Wild Turkey 101 suits you just fine. You know what? Before I keep going, I think I need to pour something. Since we're talking about turkey, and I'm not going to drink too much tonight, let's make it count. Let's do a little Wild Turkey Decades here. This Decades release was a blend of 10 to 20-ish year old bourbons. This was released in, I want to say like 2018, 2017, 2018, probably 2018. And sat on the shelf for quite some time before I bought it. Eventually, me and the rest of Bourbon Geekdom got wise, and those that were sitting on the shelf are no longer. This bourbon is not actually on my list, but it could very well be. You could substitute it for pretty much any of the bourbons I'm about to name. And one rye. Alright, the next whiskey is Breakfast. Do I condone drinking whiskey at breakfast? Well, I don't not condone it. And on Thanksgiving, you know what? Yeah, I'll condone it on Thanksgiving. But you need a whiskey that's going to pair well with a good breakfast. Sure, you're going to eat a big middle of the afternoon meal later, but you might as well pregame with a big breakfast. Some bacon, some pancakes. What pairs well with bacon and pancakes? Maple syrup. So, a whiskey that I would throw out would be, and this is kind of a wild card, Widow Jane Decadence. Widow Jane Decadence is the only whiskey that I know of. I'm sure there are more. But it's a well-aged bourbon that is finished in a barrel that was used to age maple syrup. So it's like bourbon barrel-aged maple syrup. They take the maple syrup out. They put the bourbon back in. You have Widow Jane Decadence. It's delicious. Very desserty. Very yummy. But here's the thing. if you don't have Widow Jane Decadence, you can just take maybe some of this, maybe some Russell's Reserve single barrel, something with some good oak, some girth, and then just add some maple syrup. It's awesome. It's so good. Should you keep it neat? Well, generally speaking, but adding maple syrup to bourbon is a great dessert idea for any day and would pair perfectly with breakfast on Thanksgiving Day. Whiskey number 3. This is your football pour. I think last year's football pour, due to the machismo, I went with Booker's. You know, the punchy in the face, rough and tumble. Well, I mean, if we're leaning into turkey this year, which we are, we're going to go rare breed. I mean, rare breed's barrel proof, not super hot, but in the 1-teens, and gloriously unrefined, I think is what I've called it before. Decent amount of oak, big sweetness, big spice, some nuttiness. I think it's a great football pour. So as you're sitting down watching game number 1 of 3 or 4, I forget however many games there are these days, good, solid, couple finger pour rare breed, it'll carry you. Sip it slowly though. I mean, it's a long day and we're 3 whiskeys in. Whiskey number 4 is your meal prep whiskey. This is a whiskey, I mean, let's just imagine, in the perfect world, you're cooking your food with fire. Maybe you're outside, maybe you're smoking a turkey. Maybe you're going alternative, you're smoking a ham. Maybe you've got like a brisket up in there. I don't care what you're smoking, I don't care what you're eating, but you need something that matches smoke vibes. So you need an oaky smoky bourbon. Hokey pokey, oaky smoky. You need an oaky smoky bourbon. And there's not that many options. I mean, there are some oaky ones for sure. But finding one that communicates like a level of smoke, a cigar blend, if you will, is tough. So I'm going to recommend one to you that you can actually get because of when I'm releasing this video. And that is this particular product from Dancing Goat Distillery. This is actually our barrel pick. And it is 100% corn whiskey, 7 years old, finished in Spanish oak, toasted and charred Spanish oak. And it is smoky. It is smoky, but it's also dried fruit, plenty of sweetness, some black pepper spice, some cinnamon. It's a really great grilling whiskey, I must say. How do you get this? Well, you can join our Patreon group. Down in the show notes below, there's a link to Patreon, and that is where you can support the channel, so thank you for that. And that's also where you can get access to barrel picks that I do with Brian Bikey over at Abandoned Bourbon. And this is our next one, and it's coming out like any day after I release this video. So, if you want, I highly recommend you do that. If you don't want to do that, no harm, no foul. Then I would recommend Elijah Craig Barrel Proof. This is C920. You need to get one of these rich batches. C920, B520, maybe an old pirate bottle, like up there. I mean, hard to go wrong for sure. But let's say you don't have any of those batches, pretty much any Elijah Craig batch will suit you just fine. Can only go so wrong. Now, and another pinch, if you don't have one of these, just get something double barreled. Toasted barrel. Maybe Old Forester 1910. Maybe Elijah Craig Toasted Barrel. Maybe Michter's Toasted Barrel. I'm not a big fan of the Michter's Toasted Barrel. Out of all 3 of those options, I'd probably go with the Elijah Craig. Maybe the Old Forester. I'd have to do a taste off. Anyway, first recommendation for meal prep whiskey, the Dancing Goat pick that we have coming out, then Elijah Craig Barrel Proof. I want some of that. Need me some of that. It's dinner time. Now, when you're making food go into your mouth, when you're eating, that's what people generally call it, your ability to perceive the deliciousness that is a fine whiskey goes down. But what you want to do is, because bourbon's really sweet, and you tend to eat some sweet things, sweet rolls, maybe some cranberry sauce, like that makes it really hard to taste bourbon. But if you bring something spicy to the table, it can pair well, I think better, with your meal than a lot of bourbons could. So I'm actually going to recommend a rye here. Now, I'm not a huge fan of the Wild Turkey ryes, with the exception of Cornerstone. This guy. Now, if you have Cornerstone, yeah, okay. drink that with your meal. But I'm going to recommend something a little cheaper, something that I know most people can get, something still delicious, and that's the Willet 4-year rye. This particular batch, 108.8 proof, is so good. I wish I had multiple, because I'm drinking it pretty fast. And if I were to pick any of my whiskeys really to have with a meal, I think this is the first one I would reach for. I think it has enough intensity to hold up to flavorful food, and enough sweetness and spice to contrast and complement well. So, whilst you eat whiskey is a rye, and it's Willet Family Estate 4-year. We're down to 2. We have 2 left. It's been a good day so far. We're crushing it right now. And I mentioned we're leaning turkey this year in this Thanksgiving whiskey episode. And it's dessert. It's the big time. And I'm assuming you're not pairing this with sweet food. I'm assuming you're just having this whiskey as your dessert. So this is the peak of the day. You're probably watching the 3rd football game now. You're very full, and you just want something to sit and sip. Well, I mean, one of my whiskeys of the year, maybe my whiskey of the year, TBD, that video will come later, is the Russell's Reserve 13. Gosh, I love this whiskey. It's so good and rich and sweet and spicy, and everything I want a bourbon to be. Oaky, layered, probably a little smoky too. So I can drink this all day, but I don't want to drink all of it because then I won't have any left. I want to savor it. I want to sit and think about it. So it's going to be my dessert whiskey for sure. This bottle has been controversial this year. The video I did, I released one 2 weeks ago. Really my take on Russell's 13, and people were either like, "Yeah, Drew, right on, definitely agree with you," or "No, you're full of it," and that's fine. I mean, we have differing opinions. But for me, this is the one I'm going for when it's time to just sit by the fire, chill, relax. Kids are, getting ready for bed, at least. Then finally, it's the Nightcap. Hopefully you have some family around. I won't this year. It'll kind of suck. But then I'm going home for Christmas, back to Texas, so that'll be okay. But let's imagine you did. I'll have my wife there. It'll be great. Kids will be in bed, and the day's winding down. You've had 6 other whiskeys already, so you probably don't need a heavy hitter, but you still want something that's just a nice note to end the day on. And in 2021, a whiskey that I'm not afraid to drink was able to score a backup that's delicious and is that nice note to end the day on is this one. It's Remus Repeal Batch 5. This is at least 13-year-old whiskey from from MGP, now some name that I can't remember, Ross and Squibb or some nonsense like that. And this whiskey at 100 proof, not going to hit you heavy with barrel proof whiskey this late in the day. And it's rich and it goes down easy. So to me, it's a way to come in for a soft landing after a day where you've been all over the place and you've done unspeakable things to your body in terms of what you've put into it. What's a little more, right? This is delicious. Really, really sweet and creamy with a decent amount of oak. Not terribly spicy, a little dry on the finish, but I haven't tasted it next to the Russell's 13. I would put it, though, in that whiskey of the year kind of category, at least for my profile. So that's it. It's been a great day. It's been a great holiday. I think it'll be a great holiday for you, too. Let me know what your list is. What are the ones you're popping for Thanksgiving? What's your special go-to that you plan to share with folks? Or, hey, are you going to follow my list? Maybe I'll do micro pours throughout the day, and you can follow along on Instagram. If you want some more content, I do go live periodically on Instagram, just Chat Up Nation. You can follow me at Drew P. Whiskey. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel if you want more cool content like this, some live streams Thursdays at 8, or even the occasional whiskey review. All right, y'all. It's been real this week. Catch you next Monday, probably. Around this time, probably. Until then, drive safely. Buckle up, don't do drugs, and keep it neat.